All right, guys. Well, we got one more thing to do today because 81% of you voted that you would, in fact, like me to read the introduction for my book, Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide about fighting back against woke insanity in your life. As a reminder, this book does actually come out tomorrow. Technically, some of you already have it, but it does actually come out tomorrow. And so, if you would like your copy, you can head over to Amazon and order it. The link is in the description below. It's also pinned to the top of the chat on YouTube. If you don't want to order on Amazon, go to activelyunwoke.com. You can find some non-Amazon options. Let me do this. I'm gonna bring that up there, and I'm just gonna leave this up for people to know what we're reading. I'm actually reading my print copy. Here is the introduction to Actively Unwoke as it should be read by me, the author. The introduction is called, "You Are Not a Racist." The most important thing you need to understand about the woke in this country is that, for their leaders, everything is about power. Everything. And the easiest way to gain power over another human being is to scare them into silence. On the woke political left, they do this by calling everyone who disagrees with them a racist. That's the easiest way to gain power and control over another human being in our current reality. Think about it. Racist is the very worst thing you can be called in our society. It is virtually irredeemable. Instantly, your friends and family look at you differently, wondering if it's really true. Your employer may reconsider if you deserve a job. You may lose your banking privileges. Your credit card providers may cut you off. And you could be canceled, banned, or censored on the largest social media sites in the world, the places that have very literally become the modern town square. They take away your voice, both figuratively and literally. All of these outcomes and more have happened simply by someone on the left declaring that a person they wanted power over was a racist, and most of the time, no evidence of actual racism is required. In fact, if you deny your racism, once you have been accused, people like Robin DiAngelo, author of the New York Times bestseller White Fragility, will tell you that your denial is proof of your racism. The more you deny the charge, the more proof they have of your obvious guilt. This tactic by the left is nothing new. Sure, there was a sharp uptick in accusations of racism under Donald Trump's presidency, but it was far from the first time the woke left played the race card. Though some have pegged this phenomenon starting much earlier, it can minimally be traced back to the 1970s with the publication of Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. Coincidentally, that's also when white voters in the South were exiting the Democratic Party to join the GOP in disproportionately high rates after decades of historic support. What better way to rationalize the loss of these critical voters than to play the race card? After all, they're white. They're from the South. They must be racist. And as more of this demographic supported the Republican Party, the more racist the party was portrayed by a woke left desperate to retain power. Ronald Reagan was called a racist for championing welfare reform and for his war on drugs. Though when Joe Biden joined the war on drugs and expanded the criminal penalties for convictions, the D next to his name was enough to help him avoid the racism charge. George H.W. Bush was called racist for the Willie Horton ad his campaign ran in an effort to depict him as the law and order candidate, while opponent Michael Dukakis was letting convicted murderers out for weekend furloughs. Willie Horton received one of those furloughs and used it to escape and commit more crimes. Bush was deemed racist for pointing that out. George W. Bush had a plethora of racism charges made against him, including that he was a racist for the administration's slow response to Hurricane Katrina, for wanting to invest more in border security, and for pushing immigration reform. John McCain, a hero on the left today, got called a racist when he was running against Barack Obama. The New York Times accused him of racially tinged attacks. Civil rights icon John Lewis charged that McCain was sowing the seeds of hatred and division. Teen Vogue asserted that McCain was patently Islamophobic. And CNN anchor Don Lemon tweeted, "The question is, do you think the McCain campaign is creating a political environment that is inciting hate and hate speech? Even Mitt Romney, another current golden boy on the left since he voted to remove Donald Trump from office in his impeachment trial, was accused of racism once upon a time. And he was accused of it by none other than Joe Biden, who told a majority black audience that Romney wanted to put y'all back in chains at a campaign stop in Virginia during the 2012 presidential campaign. When Romney pushed back on the remark, the New York Times declared that denial was proof of his racism, paving the way for D'Angelo's work just a few years later. And of course, Donald Trump was declared the most racist of them all, mostly for quotes that were taken completely out of context. The most infamous is the Very Fine People hoax, the moment that Joe Biden credits with inspiring him to run for the presidency. What you've probably heard is that Trump called white supremacists and neo-Nazis in Charlottesville very fine people. Put the quote in context, however, and you immediately discover that he also said the following: I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists. They should be condemned totally. You had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists. The press has treated them absolutely unfairly. But the corporate media left that part out, played the first part of the statement on an endless loop, and spent the next 4 years declaring that Donald Trump had never condemned white supremacy. So congratulations. If you have been called a racist in your life by someone on the woke left, or have ever been afraid of having the label hurled at you, you are in good company. Literally every major Republican politician and their supporters for the last 40 years have been called racist. There is always a rationalization from the left, and their propaganda arm, the corporate mainstream media, can sell to their viewers. The charge, once levied, is inescapable until you bend the knee. Notice that McCain and Romney both returned to the good graces of the left and the media when they began opposing Donald Trump. Now, you might not be a Republican, and that's okay. I'm not one either. The point is to understand the game at play. This was a game invented by people who are only interested in silencing their opponents so that power is easier to obtain and hold on to. We need heroes who are willing to fight back despite the odds, heroes who are willing to stand up and have their voices heard, even when it may come at a personal cost. Heroes who are willing to take on the fight, not because it is easy, but because it is hard. In order to effectively defend against what the woke is doing to this country, you have to know emphatically that the label of racist does not apply to you, or else you will forever be stunted and at their mercy. You are not a racist. Now, I can't guarantee that a rogue member of the KKK, an actual neo-Nazi or white identitarian, didn't get their hands on a copy of this book. But the reality is that there is not as much racism in this country as the woke left would have you believe. Does it exist? Yes. And we'll talk about that later. But is 50% of the country racist purely because they didn't vote for a Democrat for president? No. If you believe that any one group of people is truly superior to all others based on nothing more than the color of their skin, you've got some soul searching to do. And, let's be honest, probably some therapy as well. Same goes for anyone who might believe that a white ethno-state is a good idea, or that the woke left is only out to elicit a white genocide. These are fear-mongering tactics on the right that do not help us fight the larger cultural battle at play. But if your only crime is believing that America is a pretty great place to live, that it is a land of opportunity, and that our liberties and freedoms are important to protect for everyone, then I need you to look in the mirror and repeat after me. You are not a racist. It is not racist to believe that freedom of speech should be absolute. It is not racist to want to practice your religion or spirituality. It is not racist to believe in small government. It is not racist to disagree with a non-white person. It is not racist to oppose universal health care. It is not racist to believe that taxation is theft. It is not racist to oppose the COVID lockdowns, mandatory vaccinations, or vaccine passports. It is not racist to believe that individuals can achieve whatever they put their mind to, regardless of the color of their skin. It is not racist to believe that America is the best, freest country in the history of the world. It is not racist to believe children should be taught in schools how lucky they are to live here. It is not racist to push back on any charge of racism levied against you purely because of who you support politically. And denying that you are a racist is not proof of your racism. No matter what Robin DiAngelo, Ibram X. Kendi, or the New York Times want to sell you. You are not a racist. These should be statements of obvious fact. But sadly, things have gotten so out of control on the woke left that they have literally changed the dictionary definition of racism in order to accommodate their new standard. After George Floyd's death and the anti-racist protests and riots swept the nation, recent college graduate Kennedy Mitchum suggested to Merriam-Webster that they update their definition of racism. And they bent the knee, revising their definition to include the systemic oppression of a racial group to the social, economic, and political advantage of another. It is this definition that the woke left uses to define anyone who disagrees with their agenda as a racist. We'll discuss more later on why the whole idea of systemic racism is nonsense. For now, here's all you need to know. You are not a racist. The woke left have been quietly and covertly fighting this battle for decades. Today, they control the most powerful forces in our country: the schools, the universities, the government, and the media. We have now reached a point where they are literally beginning to teach our children how to be little woke activists as early as elementary school and reinforce these lessons through middle school, high school, and college. Once they're out of school, they get these ideas reinforced every single day by CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and almost every other major media outlet in existence that calls all of their detractors, even the non-white ones, racists. You are not a racist. You won't even escape this ideology in the workplace. I'm an organizational psychologist by trade, someone who traveled the country doing trainings on how to be an effective manager and teaching mindfulness strategies in the workplace prior to the pandemic. After George Floyd's death, woke training took over my industry. It was near impossible to sell trainings that were not overly anti-racist in their nature, a code word for teaching people that they are racist if they disagree. It used to be that people assumed kids would graduate from college and get forced into the real world when they found a real job. Now these organizations coddle their young employees, even paying tens of thousands of dollars per day to bring woke trainers in to reinforce the ideology. If you think everyone around you is going crazy, you are not alone. You are not a racist. Critical race theory, the ideology of the woke that we will be focusing on this book, isn't really about race. It's not about creating a more fair or equal or just society. It is only about power. They utilize it because focusing on race is both the easiest way to keep people fighting each other and the easiest way to keep people submissive to the mob. If they're focused on each other, that means they aren't looking at where the real enemy is. Those who profit off of keeping the divisions going. In fact, this ideology has created a lot of useful idiots who are just as toxic to the people they label as oppressed as is for the oppressors, teaching them that they will forever be defined by the color of their skin and that the world will always work against them. Some argue that the woke ideology is anti-white. This is a terribly short-sighted view that fails to acknowledge that the ideology is anti-everyone. It loves white people who agree with it. It hates white people who disagree with it. This ideology teaches that Black people are incapable of working hard, telling time, or getting a driver's license without the help of liberal white saviors to lift them up. These ideas are incredibly racist, and they are trying to gaslight you into believing that you are a racist merely as a projection of their own unmanaged baggage. You are not a racist. In order to become actively unwoke, you must get over any fear you have of being called a racist, knowing that the accusation itself says more about the person making it than it does about you. No matter what anyone says or what they try to convince you of, you have to believe with every fiber of your being that what they are saying is absolute bunk. Do not let them trick you. Stand your ground. Know that you're doing the right thing. When you stop being afraid of being called a racist, you take their power away from them. When enough people take their power away, that's when we can start fixing the damage that they have done. You are not a racist. Do you get it yet? You are not a racist. You're about to join the battle for a whole way of life, for the beacon of hope that the United States has been for the world for the last 250 years. This fight isn't about Democrat or Republican. It's not about liberal values or conservative values. It's about American values. Are you ready? Okay, now we can get to work. Well, that's the introduction to my book, Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against woke insanity in your life. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I worked really hard on this book. This book was incredibly difficult for me to write. It was a really soul-sucking experience. I actually wrote most of this book while I was being canceled by the right, really badly, undergoing the worst cancellation that I ever experienced. And the reason I say that is because I worked very hard at one of the hardest times in my life to make this a positive book and to make it an uplifting book and to make it something that, dare I say, have some fun with fighting back against the woke. Because, world, this is a challenge that we have to confront. And I don't think it should be a negative experience. It doesn't have to be a negative experience. We can create whatever experience we want, even when we're suffering through bullshit. So it comes out tomorrow in hardcover and Kindle version. I really hope people like it. If you do like it, please leave a positive review on Amazon. It really does help. I've already got a couple reviews. I've already got a couple of reviews up on Amazon because the Kindle version got accidentally released early. So if you have the Kindle version, if you're already reading it, please leave a positive review, 5 stars. That way, we can help kind of lift the book up and get more people to buy it. Hopefully the hardcover version will be showing up tomorrow for people who bought it. It is going to be available in bookstores as well, so you can head down to the Barnes & Noble if you want it tomorrow. And if you would like to get involved in the book club that I'm hosting for this, please send your receipts to bookclub@activelyunwoke.com. Again, I will be sending out more information on the book club. I'm really trying to wait to find out more information about when my audio version is going to be re-recorded, because there have been quality control issues with the audio version, to say the least. So I will be re-recording the audio version. I will be reading the audio version. I just don't know when yet. And I'm really trying to find out as quickly as I can when that's going to happen, so that you guys can get that version as well if you like. But if you want to join my book club for it, send your receipts to bookclub@activelyunwoke.com. And if you would like to get an autographed book plate, that will be available to annual subscribers in my locals. There's more information about that. This post is actually pinned to the top of my locals community. So if you are in locals, you should have that access to that post right at the top of the community. But essentially, if you are an annual supporter in my locals, the email address is under my ticker. Hang on, I'll take this banner down. So you can, this is only for annual members in my locals. You can send your locals handle, mailing address, and your customization request to locals@activelyunwoke.com if you would like a customized autographed book plate. And I will be checking to make sure you're a local supporter. I know most of my annual members, I think, but I will be double checking. So make sure you sign up as an annual member. You can do that by heading over to kb.locals.com/support. Clicking over to annual and signing up for $50 for the year. And that's going to get you access to all sorts of exclusive perks, to include the community Zoom call that will be starting in 20 minutes.